Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the project and risk management competition. This is our third training after we announced the shortlisted team. We have Dr. Muhammad Yunus Yassin, the president of ASTI here, to give you the session on the project and risk management. Over to you, Doctor.
Hi everyone. So this video is being recorded. So if you were to miss anything, you can always watch it again, and then when you have more time, you can watch it and stop on specific slides because I'm going to go through the slides quite fast because I want to spend a little bit more time on Q&A. Okay. So first of all, this is the second time we're running this project competition. So there's two. Last year we just ran a project management competition. This year we decided to add one more element, which is the project and risk management. Right. Okay. Right. So the main reason why you're doing this is because and why we are running this program, this particular competition, is so that we want to maximize your learning experience. So as some of you may know, who have participated in ASTI's program before, ASTI is actually more of an education-based organization, right? So our focus is education, right? It is not running a competition. So running a competition is important to us, but for us, it's more important is the journey that you have taken and what you have learned from going through this competition, right? So as far as YIC is concerned, it's about innovation, how you go through the innovation cycle and how do you come up with a new product. So that's the YIC. So, but within YIC, we are launching this competition called the Project and Risk Management Competition, which is more about understanding the process and the delivery of that particular product, right? So this competition, Project and Risk Management Competition, is not compulsory, right? It will not affect your YIC marks in any way. So if you decide that it is too much work for me, or I do not have any time for this, right? Or I've got other things to do, then you do not necessarily need to participate in this competition, aka the Project and Risk Management Competition. So it's not compulsory, right? Keep that in mind, right? But if you are, meaning you want to go through the journey to learn about project management and risk management, then you can participate in this and then register. So you have to register again for this competition. I know you've already registered for YIC, you have to register for this competition on your own. And once you have registered, we will send you the project and risk management competition template on the report. So for this competition, all you need to do is submit a report, and your report will be marked, and the winners will be announced accordingly, right? So now let's go into what you'll get from participating in this competition. So you'll the first prize will get a cash prize of RM700 with a digital certificate. Second place will get 500 with digital certificate. Third prize is 300 with digital certificates. However, all teams who have successfully submitted their project and risk management report will receive a digital certificate. However, we did notice that some teams were cheeky last year. So they just submitted like a 1 or 2 page report. So we do have a minimum result. So you must at least get 50% and above for you to be able to get a digital certificate, right? So that is basically what you would get as prizes. But for me, to me, actually, this is not important because 700 you can earn later when you grow old and you are working. You'd be earning a lot more than this. What is important for me, Ali, for me and for ASTI, is what you have learned from participating. So the learning side is, to me, a lot more important, right? So Now let's look at the YIC project report. So for Young Inventors Challenge, before you go into the video pitch, because this year is being done online, you have to submit a project report, right? But for project and risk management competition, you also have to submit a report, right? So what is the difference between the YIC project report and the project and risk management report, right? So the main difference is for YIC, you are focusing on the product. That means your innovation. What does it do? How does it help people, right? But for project and risk management, we are not really interested in the product, right? So in fact, we just want to know roughly what your product is. But what we want to know more is the journey that you took. How did you come to this product, right? And that is what we want to know. So your report has to show your journey to achieve that product. So there's no real marks in the actual product. Whether or not your product is very innovative, something very new and all that is not important for the project and risk management competition. What is important is the journey that you took to achieve that product, right? So it's basically the process, right? So now let's look at the process, the process of coming up with your product, right? Right. So let's look at the project. So for you to come up with a product, you have to have a project. So that this project will take you to the end game, which is the production of your product, right? So what is a project? A temporary endeavor to undertake or to create something new, right? Like a product or a service or even an end result, right? So you have to know that the project is temporary. So it has got a starting date and an ending date. So once you start, because with the end in mind, and then when you reach the end, it is done. So you have to now write in conclusion, okay, thank you, we have produced the report and we have produced the product and we're happy with the results. And that's it, right? So that is basically a project. Now let's look at one definition of what is project management by Project Management Institute in the US, which defines a project as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and technique to a broad range of activities in order to meet the requirement of a particular project, right? Now, this definition kind of encompasses all. If you do not really understand what the definition means, do not worry, it's okay. What you need to know is, as I said, a project is a series of things that you do, right, to achieve the end result, right? So when you have an end result in mind, be it a product or a service and all that, and then you have to take the different steps to achieve the end results. That process is called the project, right? So what is project management? The art of managing project to a successful completion. And it's got this thing called the triple constraint, right? The three most important elements in a particular project, any project, whatever that. So one is the scope. Remember I said there's a beginning and the end. So that's the scope. So from the beginning to the end is the scope of your project. And then you must finish it on time. So you may say, okay, look, I want to produce, say this product. And then you must say, when you're going to finish it by, right? You cannot say, I'll finish it in September, but then when comes September, when the person that wants the product asks you, hey, where's the product? You say, no, I haven't finished it yet. So it is very important to have your timeline specifically stated. That means your scope is completed within the timeline, taking into consideration the third constraint, which is your cost. Right? Because everything costs money, right? But costs money, not only money, but resources, right? Time is also money, actually, in a way. So time is also, in a way, you could count it as cost as well, right? So you must be able to finish it within certain amount of money. So that means you only got so much money, and I need to finish the scope complete the scope within the cost that I have determined, right? So these are called the triple constraint of a project. And when you get all these three right, will determine the quality of the project that you run. So it's not necessarily the quality of the product, remember? So your product may or may not be good, but the process in which you achieve your product, right? The process quality is good. That means you did it efficiently, right? So keep that in mind. So in today's inventors, you got project management issues of this is in a way, some would say your product or your innovation cycle in a way. So first you look at the requirement of your what is needed, the problem, and then you design the product, and then you implement it, you make it, you verify it to make sure it works. That means the product that you have created or the invention that you created works. And then finally, you need to make sure it lasts, right? So it doesn't spoil after like 1 or 2 use. So this is where, you know, when you buy a laptop, you get a 1-year guarantee, or when you buy different products, you get a guarantee, right? So that is taking into consideration the maintenance. That means the product that you have created lasts, and if it spoils, it can be easily repaired. So that's the issue of maintenance. What we are looking at when it comes to the project management, insofar as this competition is concerned, right, is the implementation side, right? So we're not too concerned about requirement, design, verification, maintenance, although this is also part of project management in a way, right? But for this competition, we are focusing only on your implementation. Right? How are you going to produce your prototype, right? So keep that in mind. Huh? Now, let's go into something new. So this is risk management, right? So this is something that we have decided to add on to kind of enhance your learning experience if you do decide to participate in this competition. And this is called risk management, right? When I first graduated, I'm an engineer, I'm a chemical engineer by training. So when I first graduated, my first job was a risk manager, right? And a risk analyst. So my job was to make sure when we build a chemical plant, that it is safe. What are the risks? How can the chemical plant go wrong, right? So that was my job, to come up with what are the ways in which the chemical plant can go wrong, right? So that's the job of a risk manager, right? So here's the definition, right? I'm not going to read all of it. So risk management is basically identification, evaluation, prioritization of your risk. So in a way, it's how your project can go wrong, right? And managing the risk. So meaning how to make it okay. Now remember, again, in this competition, we are looking at the risk of the project, the process. We are not looking at the risk of the product that you are coming up with, right? So keep that in mind. So let's say your product is, I don't know, let's say a drone, like a drone this thing, right? So we are not concerned about how safe the drone is and how the drone can go wrong. We are concerned about during the process of creating the drone, what can go wrong, right? So that is the focus of, again, this competition. Again, not the product, but the process, right? So there are 5 components of risk management. So you can read it yourself when you have time. But for this competition, we are only looking at 3 main elements, right? Which is identifying the risk, measuring the risk and assessing it, and finally, mitigating the risk. Mitigating means to make it okay, so that you minimize your risk, right? Minimize it going wrong, right? Now, there are many types of risk. Right? I'm going to go through very fast. So again, please do watch it again, watch this video again once it goes online. You can pause here and read it carefully, all the different types of risk. But I'll go through very quickly, like environment, like natural disasters, people, team. Your team, for example, let's say one of your team suddenly gets sick and cannot participate anymore. So will that pose a risk to your completion of your project? Right? So those are the kind of things that we look at when it comes to people or team or social elements, so to speak. And then you got operations. Insofar as YIC is concerned, it could be things like the actual operations of coming up with your product. Like for example, you let's say you ordered something online to build your product, and then it did not arrive. Right. This, I'm sure some of you may have experienced this. I've experienced this. I ordered something online and it did not arrive, or something else arrived. I ordered something and something else arrived. Now, what am I going to do now? So I cannot complete my invention. How do I mitigate the risk? Financial would be, again, let's say you want to buy these parts, you need money, and then the guy or your funder suddenly says, oh, I don't want to pay for your funding anymore. I don't want to pay for your invention anymore. How would you mitigate that risk? And then in terms of legal, so like drones, I do not know, some of you may know about drones. Drones, now you need approval from the government. So does your invention require some kind of approval? Is it legal? Those kind of issues. And then there are also other sites which you can Google. And there's also, I think we added this last one, which is on the health part. So let's say if you're using electricity, right, in producing your product, that obviously if you're using electricity, there could be potential risks. Like for example, you could get electrocuted, right? So how do you mitigate those risks? So these are the kind of different types of risks available. Again, please Google and you can find out more. So you can list from this now any of these 7. Maybe you may not have a problem on the environment, for example. That means your area is not natural disaster is not an issue. So fine. So you don't need to add that, right? So it's not necessarily you must have one from when you do give us the list of the risks that you have identified for your project. You do not need to add all of it, right? You not need to be sure that, oh, I need to have one in environment, one in people. No, right? We leave to you on what you think is more important. But it has to be reasonable. Like for example, if you say one of your risks is being invaded by aliens from outer space, then I don't think the judges will be too happy. I know some may believe in aliens, but I don't, the UFO sightings and all that, but I don't think that is really a risk, right? Okay. Now let's go into the competition report. So this is the most important. So your entire evaluation of this competition is based on the report that you submit, right? So you got the, and it is now divided. Last time when we did it last year, it was only the project management section. Now we added another section called the risk management section. And number 2 is the project management section, right? Right. So let's talk about the risk management section. Since I already introduced to you what is risk management, right? In the risk management section, you add an introduction about your invention, what your invention is, and your team, who your team members are. And then you mention your problem statement, provide a short description of your project and all that. So this, again, this is on the introduction side, okay? So that's the first one. Second one, on completing the table, right? Now, this is the table that you need to fill up, right? So number 1, risk. So on your leftmost column, you put the different risks. So risk number 1, describe clearly the way in which your project can go wrong, right? And then on the furthest right column, you describe how you're going to make it okay, right? By either reducing the probability or the impact. So what is the probability and impact, right? Let's, I'll mention in the following slide, but let's talk about examples of risk. So like what I mentioned just now, team members leave your team, right? Due to other commitments, or your prototype stop working on that day. You know, they call Murphy's Law, right? Everything goes all fine, but on that day when you're presenting the judges, the prototype suddenly doesn't work, right? So this happens quite often. So how do you mitigate this risk, right? Or the person that agreed to fund you suddenly decided he or she doesn't want to fund you anymore. How do you mitigate those risks, right? So here are examples of how you can mitigate. So to mitigate, say, risk number one is to plan the dates for the work and get commitment on all the teams. So that means if you plan your work carefully, say these are the dates that we are going to complete all the work, and then you tell your team members these are the days that you need to be free to make sure all this work is done. Then the chances of them suddenly saying that, oh, I've got a birthday party I got to attend, or I got to go somewhere else and stuff like that would be less, right? So that is one way to mitigate. The problem of your prototype stop working on the day where the judges are there is a mitigation. One way to mitigate is to test the prototype one day before the presentation, right? Or even say 1 hour before the presentation. Or you can build two prototypes. So let's say when you're presenting the judges, that prototype doesn't work, you always got another prototype, right? So these are the different kind of mitigation measures that you can take for the risk that you have identified. Okay. Now, let's go back to this table. So you got probability, right, and impact, right, A and B. So let's talk about probability, right? I'm sure a lot of you have learned about probability. Probability is basically the chances of something happening, right? So you have to use a scale of 1 to 5, right? This is the bottom one. I'm talking about probability first, then I'll talk about impact after that. Now, the probability, if it is easy to happen or it can happen very often, either or both, right? Then you give it a high mark, right? Or if it is very difficult to happen or it rarely happens, then you give it the lowest mark, which is 1, right? So that is probability. Let's talk about impact. Let's say it happens, let's say something, that risk that you identified happens, right? And it affects your project very badly to the extent that maybe, for example, if it happens, your entire project is done, I cannot compete in YIC anymore, right? So that will be like what's called catastrophic. So that means I cannot participate in YIC anymore. That would mean you would give it a very high mark, which is 5. Or if this thing happens, right, it's something so small, it's not even important, or you can easily solve it, then you give it a very low mark of 1, right? So again, that is impact probability, right? So in the table, you fill up the probability and impact, right? So 1 or your y-axis and x-axis would be impact probability. You can turn it around. So your probability doesn't matter which is y-axis, which is x-axis, right? In this example, your y-axis is probability, your x-axis is impact, right? It's usually better to have it this way, right? Now, how do you determine that number? So that one, so remember I told you one of my first job was as a risk manager or risk analyst. Now, to get those numbers are not easy. There's very, very complicated calculation depending on the industry, depending on the project, depending on the type of products that you're producing and all that kind of stuff, right? For us, all we require you to do is to just make an educated guess. It must be a reasonable guess, right? So for example, let's say in Malaysia, earthquake never happens. Very seldom it happens, right? So the probability of earthquake happening is very low. So I'd give it a 1, right? But let's say if I was living in, say, Hawaii or in certain parts of Indonesia, the probability of earthquake happening is slightly higher. So maybe I'll give it a 2 or a 3, right? So all we are looking at, the judges will be looking at, is you have thought this through and gave your probability and impact a reasonable number, right? A number which is believable. That's all. We are not looking at the complex calculation that you have to do to get to the exact number, right? That will be very high level. I think it will be like almost like a master's level dissertation, right? We're not looking for those kind of this thing. We're just looking for a guesstimate. What do you call a guesstimate? Guess and estimate, right? Now, to get what is in that table in the middle? So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then as you go down, you got, as you go diagonally down, you got 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25, right? To get that, those numbers are called risk ranking factor, okay? Right, risk ranking factor, which is obtained by timesing the two. Timesing, when you time X versus Y, when you times the probability versus the impact, you'll get your risk ranking, right? So if your probability of something happening is 3 and the impact of something happening is 4, then the risk ranking factor would be 4 times 3, which is 12, okay? And so on and so forth. The worst would be that if the impact is 5 and your probability is also 5, then you got the worst risk ranking factor, which is 25. Normally, if you have those kind of risk ranking is 20, let's say 20, 20, 25, 16, you see what you see in the red? Those are, you have to come up with very, very strong mitigations, right? If you are in the orange, your mitigations will be not as, will still be very important mitigations, but not as severe as those reds. The green will be, your mitigation will be very simple. Your light green, maybe you don't even need a mitigation, right? So this is to give you an idea of what kind of mitigation factors that you need to come up with based on your risk factor. Now, if you think that doing the table is too messy, right, this table, if you think that doing this table is very messy, right, because maybe you write a lot, you know, the description is a lot of words and your mitigation is a lot of words. So doing in a table would mean that it will look quite messy. You can always not use the table and use this alternative method. So risk 1, describe your risk. Risk 2, describe your risk, and then mitigation factors, and then your probability factor, which is a number between 1 to 5, impact 1 to 5, and then risk factor, you times 30. So you can do it in this format. Now, we are only looking for this competition for you to identify and come up with mitigation for 6 to 10 risks that you identify, right? So maximum of 10, right? So if you have more than 10, the judges won't look at. After 10, they will stop reading, right? So just come up with 6 to 10. So the whole idea is for us, for the judges to know that you understand how to calculate the risk factor and you understand how to identify the risk and you know how to come up with mitigation factors. That is what the judges are looking for, right? Not, oh, I'm able to come up with 500 risk factors and all that. They're not looking at numbers, they're looking at the quality, right? Now, so that is done. So that is your first section. Remember I said there's 2 sections. Section 1 is project risk section, risk management section. Now we go to the project management section, right? So in the project management section, there is a little bit more you need to do. One is you need to explain the scope, right? So I'll let you read all this on your own, right? You need to come up with a project charter, right? Which is an overview. Overview is very simple. Your project aims to produce what, right? And your approach, your project uses existing facilities in the school, blah, blah. That's an example. So what is on your right are examples. So what is the approach you're going to take to produce what you're going to produce? And then what is the objective? Again, the objective of the project, your major deliverables, right? Which I'll come into later in the following slides. Your constraints, what are the constraints, right? Or what kind of problems do you think you will face, right? Now, and finally, risk and feasibility, right? So constraint and risk and feasibility, remember the first section that you did, risk section? It will help you fill up these 2 last thing, constraint and risk feasibility, right? So it's kind of related with your risk management before, right? Now here's an example of a project charter. So a project charter is always 1 page. Do not do more than 1 page, right? However, for this competition, we let you just fill up this table, right? Again, make sure, try to make it one page, right? If it is slightly more than one page, okay. But if it goes into 2 or 3 pages, again, the judges won't read, you lose a lot of marks. So you have to be concise in each of the things that you explain. Now, there are a lot of examples of project charters on Google. So to get more examples of project charters, right, Google it and you'll find a lot, and it'll help you develop your own project charter, right? Now, second one, you need to come up with your work breakdown structure, what's called the WBS, right? Right. Again, I'll let you read this on your own, right? But I'll just go straight into the example, right? This is what you need to produce. Yeah, your deliverable is based on your work breakdown structure. So deliverable 1, deliverable 2, 3, 4, 5. And for each of the deliverables, or some would call it milestone. So it depends on how you want to call it. You can call it milestone, you can call it deliverable. For this competition, we're just calling it deliverables. And then the key activities that you need to undertake to achieve those deliverables, right? Right. If you find this format, which is this format of doing it as a flow chart, again, you are going to write a lot. So again, it's going to look messy. You can do it in the table format, right? Now, I'm going to go, rather than telling you, let me just show you an example of a deliverable and the activities that you need to take. So, the first deliverable is, let's say you want to build something, you need to get the materials right. So that is your first deliverable. Get the materials needed for the project, right? So your first activity is, number one, have a meeting, discuss the cost, determine the budget, allocate the money, organize a trip to buy the materials, right? Or in this case, it could be organize a trip to this one, or go to Shopee or Lazada or one of the online and order the materials, right? But don't forget, there's risk. What if what you ordered did not come properly and has this one? So keep that in mind. So based on the risk factor, you can either go and buy it yourself or order it online, right? This one normally depends on more complex this thing. That's where there's a chance that when you order something online, it may not come exactly how you wanted it to come, as opposed to you actually seeing it. So this is one deliverable, an example, right? Now it's up to you how detailed you want to make your work breakdown structure. For example, you can say organize a trip to buy the materials can be deliverable, in which your activities can be to do research for the cheapest places for the material via online. It can be online, what kind of transport you're going to take, what time you're going to leave, how you're going to leave, with who you're going to leave, how much are you going to pay cash, are you going to make credit card. So those are, so the above example is not as detailed, but here you can have, within the deliverable, you can have sub deliverables where you go a lot more deeper, right? Now, for this competition, you may not need to go to that kind of detail, right? So we just want you to have enough detail for the judges to understand that these key activities that you have identified will achieve the deliverables that you have identified. So as long as there's enough detail there, it's okay, right? Then it's enough. You don't need to go too much detail. You don't need to go into too much detail. So for example, you need to say, I'm going to pay by credit card or cash or debit card. Those are too much detail, which is not really needed, right? Now, step 3. Sorry, I got a sore throat. So in step 3, right, you need to come up with an action plan, right? So in the first one, you just talk about the activity, right? The second one, you also need to determine the time and who is going to complete the activity, right? Right. So this you do it in a table format. The easiest would be for you guys to use an Excel spreadsheet, right? Last year, we asked you to send 3 Excel spreadsheets. or to copy and paste into the Word document free Excel spreadsheet when you're completed 30%, 70%, 100%. But I think a lot of students, a lot of teams found it very difficult. So this year we're only asking for one Excel spreadsheet at 100% completion, right? So let's give this example. So the first one, we have done the first one for you. So the first deliverable is to write a project charter, right? So one is to organize. So the what you need to do to write the project charter is number one, organize team brainstorming, and then you put the date, your planned date and the actual date. So in the actual date, if you did it in the actual date, so let's say 18/4/2006, okay, the dates past lah. I mean, so let's say on that date, and you managed to do it at that same date, you just put a tick on the actual. If you couldn't, then you put it in a different date. The actual date, you put a different date, no issue. But this is as when you finish the project, you can always look back and you can say why were you delayed, so that you can learn from your previous mistakes, so that for the next project you'll be able to do things more efficiently, right? So 1.2 is write project charter. So organize brainstorming, write project charter, get your mentor's feedback, and who's going to do the respective things. So in the case of brainstorming, Ali is going to do. In the case of writing project charter, is Akau and Devi. Getting the mentor's feedback, you as a team can go and meet the mentor and get the feedback and stuff like that. And then, is there any cost element, right? For tea and coffee, for example, let's say you're just going to have water, mineral water, or something like that, then there's no tea, there's no cost. And whether or not is pending or completed, right? So in this case, because 100% completion, we're only asking for 100% completion. All your this section on status remark will be all be completed, right? Now, once you have done that, step 3, the third requirement, the fourth requirement is to produce a Gantt chart, right? So based on this, your project charter, based on this, all your deliverables, right? You put all your deliverables here and your Gantt chart. Are you going to complete in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever this week, or you put the date, or you put the month, or you put the week of the month. That is not important. We just want to know how long is it going to take. If in this format here, you got week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, you just mention at the bottom the starting date of week 1. So then we will know what is the date of week 9 or week 10 or week 12 or whatever not. Okay. So this is the Gantt chart. Again, you can Google it on how different ways to do. There are even apps to do your own Gantt chart and stuff like that. You can download and then produce your Gantt chart. Now, finally, this is the last thing that you need to do for your report, right? Which is your SWOT analysis. Now, in the project management document, this is not really required, right? But for our competition, we require you to do this, right? A SWOT analysis on the strength, weakness, opportunities, threat of the project. Again, not of your product, but of your project, right? So what are the strengths of your project? That means all the teams were on time, all the teams did everything very well. So that could be your strength. Or your weakness could be one team member did not do their work. That could be one of your weakness. Let's talk about person now. Your opportunities is, this is a very good team, because let's say all the team did their work well. This is a very good team. Therefore, in your recommendation, because of the opportunities, you can say this team should remain intact and go and participate in other competitions, because this team is a good team, right? And the threat would be, let's say, for example, one team member or two team members do not seem too interested in participating in competitions like this. So then, in which case, then your recommendation would be to strengthen your team with bringing in other team members who like to do this kind of stuff, who like to participate in events such as YIC and so on, right? Now, remember, SWOT analysis is not, again, at the bottom, it's not about your product. This is not about your product, but your journey, your project, right? In your other report, it's about your product for YIC report. But for this competition, it is about your project. Right? Finally, after you have done the SWOT analysis, you come up with a recommendation like what I just told you just now, the different types of recommendation that you come up with. Right? Now, your submission deadline is the 30th of September 2024. Yeah, submission link will be given later. And soon, either tomorrow or day after, Manita will be sending a sheet of paper with the format of your report. So basically, it's very simple. You just, once you get the sheet of paper, you just need to fill up all those things which are in the sheet of paper and then submit it back to us, right? So I guess that's it. So shall we go straight into Q&A? I think I bored you guys enough. 45 minutes is quite, okay, 38 minutes I think I spoke for. You made good time actually. So any questions, guys?
Team, you can post your question in the chat box. We will read it out and answer your question. Thank you.
Manita, you read it for me, the chat.
Okay. So we have one. All YIC participants required to join this competition.
No. Okay. So let me again, I reiterate as I said at the beginning of this thing, it is not compulsory to the extent that the judges will be different, right? Now, keep this in mind. We found this issue last year, which is one or two teams. So when they submit the YIC report, they did not add certain element because they thought they already added it in the project management report, right? Do not do that. You have to repeat it, right? Just assume that this project, this competition will go to one group of judges. For the YIC, which is the main competition, will go to another group of judges, and these judges will not talk to each other, right? Assume that. So you do not need to participate in this competition. The judges who are marking your project report and who will be doing the Viva for you if you are shortlisted to come for the Viva session will not even know that whether or not you have participated in this competition, right? They will not know because we want to make sure it is independent, right? So to answer your question, it is up to you whether or not you want to participate in this competition. If you think that you do not have time, you have other things to do not participate in the competition, participate only in the YIC. Go ahead with the YIC. But if you think that this is something which is interesting, you want to maybe go into another competition, but more importantly, you want to learn more about project management and risk management, then please do participate in this competition, right? Okay, so again, it is not compulsory.
Okay, next one, Doctor. Should we have a mock-up first, then the real project?
Okay, so here's the thing. In project management, right, you don't even need to show us your product. You don't need to show us, because we're not interested in your product. We're only interested in your project. And you must always remember, to produce your product, you need the project, right? So the project, so for example, let's say, let's talk about the journey. So the project is the journey. Your product is the end, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's take this as a metaphor. Let's say you're going to Penang or you're going to Philippines, right? Now, would you send a picture of Philippines before you have gone there? You can't, right? Let's say you are at home now. You are at home in Kuala Lumpur, and you want to go to Manila. You can only take pictures and put it on WhatsApp and your Facebook and all that after you have reached Manila, right? When you're in KL, you cannot take pictures of Manila and send it out, right now. So imagine the journey that you took from your home, getting into the airport, getting into the plane and all that, and then reaching Manila. That is the project. Okay, this is a metaphor. That's this one. The end game, you have reached Manila and then you're taking pictures and all that. That is the product, right? So in this competition, we will assume that your product has not been completed. It is not finished yet, right? So you do not need to even show us your product for this competition. We want to see how the project, how you manage the project to come up with the product, not the product. Okay, remember that, right? So you don't need to show us the product. You need to just come up with a project management this thing. Again, you just need to fill up this form, and you have understood the risk factors in that project that you are going to run. Okay, so I hope you understand that.
Okay, next one, Doctor. Can we
Yeah.
have a support from someone that doesn't involve in this competition?
So support. So again, so in all our competitions, we allow for 2 mentors. Normally, your 2 mentors are teachers, right? And the reason why we said that is that 2 mentors will get certificates. You can go and talk to as many people as you want and get as advice from as many people as you want, not just for project management and risk management competition, but also for YIC or any other competition that you participate, right? The only difference is we will not give them certificates. We will only give certificates to 2 mentors only, right? 2 mentors that are helping you. You have to name them, and we will give them a certificate, right? As a mentor, right? You can go to as many. I would suggest for project management, the best person to help you is usually an engineer, because an engineer's job is to manage projects, right? So as you are going through the process and you're filling up the form and all that, please do meet an engineer. Maybe your parents is, or your uncle or your auntie is an engineer. Get their help. No problem. I just, you do not even need to mention that you have got the help, but we do want to know, we just want to know who were the 2 mentors that you have identified. So as I said, normally they're a teacher, but you can always, uh, if let's say you only got 1 mentor, you can put another mentor who's your parent, for example, and that parent will get a certificate. Hope that is clear. If you're not clear, please ask follow-up questions. Next.
Any more question, team? We have another 8 minutes to go.
Come on, guys. You can always ask. You don't have to type. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you would be interested in this competition or in this sub competition? Ah, goody. I'm seeing some hands. Cool. So I hope that you learn, right? Remember, it is not about winning, it is about learning, right? That is what we are hoping for. All our programs are designed in a way that you learn the most. So this competition is about you learning about risk management, the basics of risk management, the basics of project management. Somebody did ask last year that why are we going through this, come filling up this form and all that. It's such a simple, this one, we can just do it on our own. I can think of it on my own. Actually, yes, that is true. But when you're doing a big project, let's say you're building a power plant or a wastewater treatment plant and stuff like that, where you have, say, 600 engineers working on it, and one main contractor with 30 different subcontractors and another 80 subcontractors and different elements and different agencies and governments and all that. So the level of complexity becomes very great for a big project. That is where you need this kind of documentation. So what we are trying to do by organizing this competition is to introduce you to how big projects are run, right? So by you doing the small project, you're doing a small project, it's just a 3 month project, 5 of you are involved. But by going through this process of documenting and coming up with the different deliverables and stuff like that, you would understand, and hopefully, especially let's say if your ambition is to be an engineer, it will really help you when you do become an engineer. Right. Again, as I said, this is not compulsory. It will not affect your YIC marks in any way. Right? The judges are totally separate. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
No, doctor. I think we can conclude.
Okay, so we look forward to your this thing. Again, if you do have any questions, I'm sure once you have logged out and suddenly, hey, I got this idea. Hey, oh, maybe I should have asked this question. Do not worry. You can always email us the question and we will reply to your questions. Okay, guys. We look
Thank you,
forward to
everyone.
you
Thank you,
participating in
team.
this competition. Okay, guys, bye.